everyone, thanks so much for stopping by. Now today, for my Countdown to Christmas series, we're going to make a Christmas card using a Lawn Fawn stamp set. It's called Deck the Halls. Now it's a smaller stamp set, but for being so small, it sure does pack a lot of punch. So I thought we'd make a card using that, and I do have the coordinating dies. Now I have a piece of Strathmore Bristol smooth cardstock here. I just buy the big paper pads, and then I trim it down into 4/4, just easier for me to handle. Now I'm going to use some nesting dies here. Now these dies actually came with one of my die cut machines, so I thought I'd just use these today. I'm going to cut out a panel using that Strathmore Bristol paper, and then when I have that done, I thought it'd be nice to add a little bit of an embossed edge. So I'm going to take the two size smaller dies than the one that I used to cut out, and I'm going to adhere them with some Post-it tape back on that panel, and then I'm going to be using an embossing mat, and I'm going to run that through my Big Shot. Now the embossing mat that I'm using is from another die cut machine, but for me it worked out great. So I know all embossing mats are different widths, so but the outcome of this really turned out really pretty. I really liked it. So I'm just going to add my mat, place my little panel down, and just run that through. And I love the effect that this gave. I think it gave a real pretty, elegant look. Love that. Now we're going to do some stamping. Now, in the stamp set, there's 3 pine needles, 3 different sizes. I'm going to take the largest one, and just so my paper doesn't shift, I'm going to use some temporary adhesive and stick it down to this mat here. This is actually a laminated piece of grid paper that I use for my Tim Holtz stamp platform, but it works perfect. Now I'm going to stamp the larger pine needle with some Versamark ink, and I am going to go basically you can't tell what I'm doing here, but I'm going to basically create like a snowflake almost. So I'm going to stamp 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times with the large one, and then all the open areas on this panel I'm going to stamp with the smaller pine needle stamp there. Now once I have that done, I'm going to take some Nouveau Glacier white embossing powder, and I'm going to heat emboss that entire panel. Once I have it embossed, you'll be able to see where I stamp the images. Kind of, sort of. But there they are. Now I want to add some color to the panel. Now, for me to do that, I wanted to use my Distress inks. So I have Twisted Citron, Bundled Sage, and Shabby Shutters. So I'm going to start off going over the large pine needles with my Bundled Sage. I'm just using my finger daubers, and then I'm going to go in with my Shabby Shutters, and those two colors were really similar. I don't know if it's because I used the same color finger dauber, but they turned out pretty similar. And then I just highlighted a little bit around the edges with the Twisted Citron, and I did make sure I went all the way up to those embossed lines on that panel. Now we're going to do some stamping. Now I'm going to take the medium-sized pine needle, and I'm going to use some green ink. This ink is from Stampin' Up. It's Garden Green. It's a real beautiful green. And I'm going to stamp the medium pine needle 4 times. And then I'm going to go in with this itty-bitty small one. I'm going to stamp that a couple times. And then I'm also going to take the small pine needle, and I'm going to stamp that with the same color ink 3 times. Oh, well, maybe 2 times. Now I want to stamp the pine cone in the stamp set, and for the color I'm using a Stampin' Up ink again, and this one is Tip Top Taupe. I'm going to stamp my little pine cone 6 times, but I ended up only cutting out 5. So now that we have our little images stamped, I'm going to stamp our sentiment. Now in the stamp set, I like the sentiment that says Holly Jolly Days, or did I say that backwards? Jolly Holly Days. I'm going to place my panel in my Mini Misty, add my little sentiment, and then I'm just going to use the VersaFine ink and stamp that. Now to cut out my sentiment, I have a sentiment die. I'm just going to place that on there, and using some post-it tape, I'll just secure it down. And then I do have the coordinating dies to all those images, and so just die cut everything out. Okay, now we're ready to assemble. Now I wanted to add a little bit of something extra on this panel, so I'm taking the largest glue dots that I have, and actually they're pretty large, and I'm placing 3 of them right in the center. And then in my stash I have this copper wire. Love this stuff for accents on cards. It adds a beautiful texture to your cards, and it adds a beautiful little bit of shine. I'm just squinching it all together and sticking it on top of those glue dots, kind of shaping it into like a circle. And then I did add some dimensional adhesive behind all my little elements there, and I'm just gonna, and my sentiment also, we're gonna place that down first right in the center, covering up those glue dots, and then we're just gonna arrange our little scene. I added 2 of the pine cones on top and then 3 on the bottom, and then I just kind of filled in with all of the pine needles. And I did kind of put my little stamped images over and under that copper wire. And so there we have our panel. I think that turned out so pretty. Now, finishing touches, I'm going to go in with some red gems. I'm just going to add a few here and there. Lovely. And I did pop that up with some foam tape. So we're going to set that aside and work on our card base. Now I wanted to add a little bit of embossing around the edges of my card base also. So I have 3 rectangle dies, and I'm going to place them all in a row on my panel here. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with my my first panel. I am going to add my embossing mat and just run that through. And I love the edge. It really makes it look elegant, I think. Just gives it a real finished look. And the nice thing about this is this actually embossed on the inside too, so I think that looks really pretty. Now I want to add a little color to my card base, so I have these acrylic paints, just cheapy acrylic paints. I added water to thin it out, and just using my paintbrush I'm just going to splatter some dark green splatters on my card base here. And then I did want to mix it up, so I added a lighter green splatter also. I just let that dry. Lovely. Now I'm going to remove the backing off of this decorative panel here, and I'm going to place that on my card base. I did add a couple more of those red gems. And then for finishing touches, I'm going in with my Spectrum Noir shimmer pen and giving it a little bit of shimmer and shine, and that's it. That's my card for today. I hope this gives you an idea on making a Christmas card. I thank you so much for stopping by. Let me know what you think. Give me a thumbs up or leave a comment below. I appreciate you all so much for watching, and have a fantastic day. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.